Quarantine Challenge Day 40 is Psalm chapter 40, verse 5. It says, "Many, O Lord, my God, are your wonderful works which you have done, and your thoughts towards us cannot be recounted to you in order. If I would declare and speak of them, they are more than can be numbered." And God has proven that in so many ways in this past week. We've been talking about the fact that I had to have surgery, and it was a laparoscopic surgery, which is a lot simpler, but there's always things that can go wrong in any surgery, and it's not an easy decision to make, especially right now. But God had opened every door. And so as they took me back and began to put the mask over my face so they could give me the anesthesia to put me asleep, I began singing the song that God had given me, because that's His provision. He gives you a song in your heart. And I was singing under my breath the song of worship that He had given me, just saying, "Lord, I trust you." And I slowly went off to sleep. And that's when He showed up in a way that I hadn't expected. I was aware that I went to sleep in my body and in my mind, but your spirit is still connected to God. And so I found myself sitting in a waiting room, and people ask, "Oh, did you have an out-of-body experience?" No. My spirit was still talking with God, still communicating with God. And so I'm sitting there in this dark waiting room. I could hear the doctors and nurses working. Sarah who was waiting in a waiting room outside, had contacted people and said, "Can you please pray? Tim's having surgery right now." And even though she had to tell me later who she contacted, I was aware while I was sitting there in my spirit in waiting that all these people were praying. And thank you so much. There were so many awesome people that prayed for me while I was in my surgery. But God had one more surprise. As I was sitting there in the dark, I felt Him walk in the room. I never saw Him, but He just sat down and He wrapped His arms around me. And if you have ever been wrapped in the arms of Jesus, it is one of those things that is so powerful. You don't need to see Him. You know that He's there, that everything is okay. And He spoke to me gently of how important this was and how I needed to have this surgery. And we didn't know. I didn't know. Sarah wouldn't find out until the end of the surgery how serious it was. The doctors couldn't tell us before they went in there how serious it was. But it was serious. But He comforted me in that waiting room, in my spirit. He sat with me the whole time, just assured me that everything was okay, that He had put all of this together, reminding me of all the things that had fallen into place for me to have this surgery. And we just sat quietly together until I heard this voice say, "So what do you do for a living?" And I said, "Well, I'm a welder." "Oh, what kind of things do you weld?" And then it hit me. I'm in the recovery room, and the nurses are starting to talk to me to try to get me to wake up because the surgery is over. And for a split second, I turned back and I was like, "Jesus, do I have to go?" Because it felt so amazing sitting with Him. And He said, "Yes, it's time for you to go." And I felt like my flesh was being torn and I was being pulled away. But I began answering the nurse's questions and waking up. And that little time that I shared with Him, the couple hours that I sat with Him, started to fade away, and I began to wake up, and I was okay. No matter what you're going through, you can trust that Jesus is there sitting beside you. And as you learn to trust in him, as we've been talking about in Psalm 40, you start to know that he's sitting there. You become aware that he's sitting there with you. He will take you through the hard times.